Ghost University. So we're have a talk about behavioral modification. And I'm going to show a video from a man named Yuri Bezmenov. He's a former KGB agent. And he used to go from country to country to basically perform behavioral modification on a society. He wanted to change the country's opinions about certain topics. And he didn't have to hide to do this. In order for it to work on a large scale, especially in his day, you had to do it out in the open so everyone would know about it and people would start to talk about it. And no one would talk about it if it wasn't brought to the forefront of society at the time. And so it brings me to the idea that these things have happened a lot in the 1900s, all right? And the way they do it, according to Yuri, is they attack your morals. And if people are attacking your morals overtly, right, out in the open, overt meaning publicly, covert is private, all right? Private activities or covert military activities, think of it that way. Covert, secret military activities, and overt are things that people do in the open. An overt war. It was done out in the public eye. And he's going to go through the steps in which he and his KGB mates would overthrow the ideas of a society and how long it takes for that to happen. And that just brings together the idea that in society, people over the years have definitely understood that there's a certain order that society should have. Now, there's another group of people who don't want any order. I'm mentioning different sides who are fighting for order because a few years ago in Michigan, there was a satanic temple meeting. From the official satanic temple, I don't really advise it, but you could go to their website and look around. And you'll definitely see the Baphomet head. And they have some of their doctrine on the website. But at the state capitol in Lansing, they were talking about what it means to be a Satanist. And they gave some points of view that they have about how people should have the right to decide for themselves what right and wrong is. And like I've said before, in Masonry, they believe the same thing. That if, you're trying to be righteous, you should be able to make that decision for yourself. And in effect, that makes it so, how can we all help each other or know the difference between right and wrong if we're all deciding for ourselves what right and wrong is? Where is the right and wrong manual? So, through ideological subversion or behavioral modification, people want to change what right and wrong has been throughout the centuries, throughout an aeon even. And so what we end up with is you have to start a movement. And then the movement has to make enough racket so everyone starts to recognize them. And so even if the movement is incorrect as far as what antiquity says, people will still pay attention to the movement and will start to think, okay, maybe it's time we changed. And people even say that about the Bible, that can't be real, or maybe God has changed his mind. How do you know? Well, God said that these things that he wanted would last forever. He's not changing his mind. He wants the same 10 Commandments followed that he wrote down back in the day for Moses up through now. He hasn't changed his mind. Okay? We have to get to the point of figuring out what right and wrong is. So even when small groups get together, because some of these groups are pretty minute, all right? And or some of the things that social justice people fight for, such as the whole thing about what sex you have to be to go into a bathroom. That thing is completely out of hand. I'd feel different about it if somebody was standing at the door checking IDs, or you had to swipe your card at the door, right? You got to swipe your ID at the bathroom door before you walk in. Maybe there's one door you have to walk through before you get to the bathroom. Like sometimes it's like that, right? You walk through one door and then there's another door before you're in the actual bathroom. What if you had to swipe your card at the first door to get into the actual bathroom? Now that would make a difference. But until then, there is a small group of people out here fighting for something that's so minute because no one's standing at the door to make sure that this thing is actually legit as far as who's going into what bathroom. And so to top it off, it doesn't take a huge group of people to make changes in society. It takes people to make enough noise to make changes. When the Soviet Union went through the change to communism, they were even saying that the people who wanted changes in society were very few. The Bolsheviks, they were very few in number. It didn't take a lot of them to make a lot of changes. For that matter, the people who wanted the Israelites and the Hebrews for all the changes that they wanted, they needed a small number of people to make a big change in the world. Everyone knows that there were a small number of people. Wasn't very many of them. Doesn't take very many people to make a big change. Sometimes it does take a lot of people. But in antiquity, if you read enough, you'll find out that it doesn't take a big amount of people to make a huge change in society. It takes very few. All right? I've already talked for 5 minutes. I'm going to let Yuri Bezmenov talk more now about ideological subversion. And like I said, I call it behavioral modification on an entire society. All right? Take it away, Yuri.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare.
When I hear a long process, I think about the great work and Albert Pike and Masonry, meaning the part of the great work that consists of they don't know how long it'll take for them to implement their ideas, all right? Or the ideology of the ancient mysteries, the ancient mystery schools. That's a part of the great work. The things that they taught in the ancient mystery schools are the things that are part of the great work. And it's certainly a part of the things that these people do through ideological subversion or behavioral modification. If they don't care how long it takes, they're going to fight and fight and fight and fight until they get it. That's why it's taken the New World Order so long to come about, because you have to wait for certain things to happen. And if they just don't happen naturally, they'll find a way to make it happen. And that's why they put these people in place, so they can find ways to make things happen in order for a new change to come about. Keep in mind that in secret societies and in Freemasonry, like Albert Pike was involved in, their god is Lucifer. So when you see them say that everything you do should be in the service and glory of God, they mean Lucifer, not the God of the Holy Bible and the Scriptures. Not Jesus Christ either. They mean Lucifer.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages.
Before Yuri starts talking about the 4 stages of ideological subversion, I want to talk about the reality that God said he made and that people should see every day, all the time, since the beginning of the world, all right? Romans 1:20 says, "For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." Meaning, everything we see should let us know that God is real, and the reality that's in the scriptures about how people should live is reality. Anything else is uncivilized, all right? Stealing from, old commercials, but it's so fitting. We have to know what a civilized society is, and then understand when we're becoming uncivilized. Because if we look in the world today, we definitely have some unruly things going on. No one seems to know what's going on out here. Problem is most of these people who run society aren't really interested in following the rules that God made. Okay? Since the beginning of the world, people should know and be able to go back and look back through history that God is real and he made reality. We should be able to look at our surroundings and understand that we should be without excuse. We are without excuse in God's eyes because he's made things, so we should understand that he is God and he means the things that he says. But you leave it up to these people, they will try and change reality. He just told you. And they do it overtly, right in front of your face, and wait for the changes to happen.
The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism.
I didn't want to have my video be extra long, but the Communist Manifesto needs to be talked about, because I'm aware that many people don't and never have wanted to even look at the 10 planks to the Communist Manifesto. But in light of all the social programs that we have running at the moment, and additional social programs that we're going to be looking at here in the future, including no rent, we should take a look at this. Number 1 is the abolition of private property. Number 2 is a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. I'm only going to speak on a few of these, just so people want to go kind of look at it on their own. And so in 1913, they brought about the Fed. And the Fed started the income tax. Before the income tax, we charged other countries a tariff to bring their goods into America. To import their goods into America, we charged them money instead of charging the American citizen. But once the Fed came in, they started to decrease the amount of tariff that they charged countries by 4% a year. And then by the time it was all pretty much wrapped up and there was no more tariff left, then Clinton came in with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And so through free trade, our taxes have become sky high. There's no mystery why taxes are high. Taxes are sky high because they don't charge other countries any money like Trump was trying to do. Not saying I'm a Trump supporter, but certain deals that he was getting us up out of, I said, all right, cool. Hopefully that ends up being more money in our pocket. If not, then whatever. But on paper, that's what that should come to, is you get more money in your pocket when we charge other countries a tariff. 3 is the abolition of rights of inheritance. But go figure, why would you be able to inherit anything if number 1 is the abolition of private property? I'm going to skip down some here to number 10. There's free education for all children in government public schools. All right? And that is, again, in and of itself, you send your child there to learn what the state wants them to learn. That's like a double whammy because now you don't know what the heck your child's learning in school. And then they're trying to make it free, which drives down salaries for teachers. And it's going to drive down salaries for professors as well. Who's going to want to be a professor and you can't really make money? And so when they also, when we also get all this free healthcare that's probably going to come back one day in the future, you can count on higher taxes then. Just ask the people over in Europe what free healthcare is doing to their taxes. So when you guys can, get a look at the Communist Manifesto. There are a lot of important things in there that need to be looked at and understood by us as Americans and citizens of America.
American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and
Yes.
who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will they will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents.
Yes.
Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins. Never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system, or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to, unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, There must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds, including your precious lives. The second thing, the moment at least part of United States population is convinced that the danger is real, they have to force their government. And I'm not talking about sending letters, signing petitions, and all this beautiful, noble activity. I'm talking about forcing United States government to stop aiding communism. Because there is no other problem more burning and urgent than to stop the Soviet military-industrial complex from destroying whatever is left of the free world. And it is very easy to do. No credits, no technology, no money, no political or diplomatic recognition, and of course no such idiocy as grain deals to USSR. The Soviet people, 270 millions of Soviets, will be eternally thankful to you if you stop aiding a bunch of murderers who sit now in Kremlin and whom President Reagan respectfully calls government. They do not govern anything, least of all such complexity as the Soviet economy. So basic, two very simple, maybe too simplistic answers or solutions, but nevertheless they are the only solutions. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight. If we are talking about capitalists or wealthy businessmen, I think they are selling the rope on which they will hang very soon. If they don't stop, if they cannot curb their unsettled desire for profit, and if they keep on trading with the monster of the Soviet communism, they are going to hang very soon. And they will pray to be killed, but unfortunately they will be sent to Alaska probably to manage industry of slaves. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocy as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system. You may ask me, what is it in for me? Survival, obviously, because unlike, as I said, I am now in your boat. If we sing together, we'll sing beautifully together. There is no other place on this planet to defect to.
One last time. The way up out of this is to educate ourselves. Okay? That's the only way out. I'm not saying knowledge like Gnosticism or the Matrix. I'm saying to understand the different ways of government and understand the past and understand that communism can indeed and has indeed affected America. One of the things I said in my intro video is that I would get into talking about a book called Foundations, Their Power and Influence. And in that book, our own government back in like the 40s or the 50s were going through American textbooks. And they understood that the textbooks at the time had a severe leaning towards Satanism and communism. Karl Marx wanted to be a Satanist. And the reason he started leaning that way is because his father, who allegedly was a Christian, wasn't treating him good. And so Marx decided to lean into Satanism. And so when you look at the Communist Manifesto, and all the freedom that it takes away from people, and if you compare that with the Ten Commandments, and how even in the 10th commandment, people can own things that you shouldn't covet, then Marx was completely against those things. And we need to educate ourselves about communism and its ills. And I recommend that people go out and grab the Black Book of Communism. I'm going to cover that as well. I have my notes together. I just need a good way to show you guys what the Black Book is talking about without just reading. So we'll be visiting the Black Book of Communism and Foundations, Their Power and Influence in the very near future. Thanks for watching. Ghost University.